YouTube, good morning. It's Mike here. I'm back with another video. And today, we're pruning fruit trees. I'm standing here in my little backyard orchard where I have a couple different varieties, sizes, ages of fruit trees that today I'm going to be pruning. It's the perfect time to prune. It's January, it's winter, it's about 35 degrees, and these trees are dormant. So let's get into it. So when we're talking about fruit tree pruning, or just pruning in general, there's a couple things that I want to go over. There's the type of cuts, there's the type of buds that we're looking for, and there's also the tools that we're going to use to make the pruning happen. I'll start off with the tools themselves because that's typically where you start. Right here I have a pair of side cut pruners, and I have some isopropyl alcohol. Now, you might be thinking, why would you need alcohol if you're talking about pruning trees? The reason is we want to sterilize these pruners. I sharpened these up already, but we want to make sure that this cutting edge is sterilized so that we don't transfer any potential diseases from tree to tree. So I'll make sure to wipe my alcohol on my blade here before I move on to the next tree, just to be safe. I don't know, and I don't think that any of these trees here have any diseases, but there is a possibility, so we want to be careful. Okay, now that we've gone over the tools, let's go over the types of buds that there are on a fruit tree. We want to identify the buds before we start pruning so that we know we're not cutting fruit tree buds or too much vegetative buds off of a branch. So come on in and let's show you guys what a vegetative bud looks like. So when we're talking about vegetative buds, we're looking for buds that are really tight to the branch, and we're looking for buds that are spaced out, and they're typically on first year growth or growth that grew during this last season. When we're talking about flowering buds, or buds that will yield fruit, we're looking for buds is typically lateral, coming off of a second year wood. It is round, it's fat, and it has, it comes off the branch a little bit. Now this will open up to become a flower, it will be pollinated, and then it'll bear fruit, which is what we're all looking for in a fruit tree. So it's important not to cut these off during the pruning process unless you absolutely have to, or it's going to change the shape of the tree. So those are the two types of buds that we're looking for before we start pruning. Identifying those are very important, and it's going to help you have a bigger yield next year. Okay, now I want to go over the three types of cuts that we're going to be doing when we're pruning our fruit tree. We have our heading cut, we have our thinning cut, and we have our bench cut. And these three cuts are going to determine the shape, the height, the overall productivity of the tree. So it's important to know when to use certain cuts and when not to. So let's go into it. Okay, so what we're looking to do when we're pruning a fruit tree in general is we're just trying to shorten it. We don't want it to be so tall that we can't pick the fruit. And we want to make a nice structure out of it. So as you can see, I'm standing in front of this. This is an Asian pear tree, and it kind of went crazy last year. It was throwing shoots off all over the place. It was growing inside, and branches are crossing each other. So this is a great example of a tree that we need to prune before the season starts. So I'm going to be using a mix of the three cuts that I just described, and I'm going to be identifying the types of buds that I just described as well while I'm kind of shaping this fruit tree here, this pear tree. So the first type of cut we're going to be demonstrating is a thinning cut or a shortening cut. This is the type of cut that it actually removes an entire branch off of the tree. It's a pretty common cut. You're going to be doing a lot of this on your younger trees that you're looking to shape and mold. And this tree is a 3-year-old tree, so I'm still trying to get that structure down before I start making any heading cuts. So let's look at the tree. And when you're doing pruning, it really is an art project. You want to take a step back and you want to just observe the whole tree and kind of see where you want to go with it. And you're going to be doing this process a lot while you're pruning, just to see what you want. So a couple rules of thumb when or important rules that we would want to do when we're looking at pruning a tree is you don't want any branches crossing each other. That's a big no-no, because as those branches flush out and get leaves, it's going to become really dense. It allows more environment for pests, bugs to kind of live in. The branches rub together, they create damage. There's a lot of reasons why you don't want branches crossing, and we want to open up the center of this fruit tree. So by cutting out a lot of the stuff in the middle, we're going to allow more vigor and growth to come around the outside of the tree. So with those things in mind, looking at this tree, I can see a lot of branches that are growing into the middle and a lot of branches that are crossing over each other or will cross over each other with another year of growth. So with that in mind, let's do some shortening cuts. Or some thinning cuts. That's where we remove the entire branch. So coming around, I can see that there's a branch right here. This one looks like it is absolutely growing in the middle. It's crossing other branches, it's touching other branches. So we want to remove this branch completely because it's only going to cause problems. So I'm going to come back all the way to where the branch comes off of the main stem here, and I'm just going to cut that guy right off, just like that. And that's going to remove the entire branch, and it's going to stop that branch from growing and causing future damage. So when we're looking for a shortening or a thinning cut, we want to remove the whole branch. And these are the branches that are crossing over. So what we're looking for is a branch going in toward the middle, and we want to cut that out. So again, here we go. We're going to find a branch. There's a branch here that is just not doing what we want it to do. It's growing inside toward the middle. It's crossing and touching other branches. So we're just going to come in and just completely cut that guy right out of there. And that's a shortening cut or a thinning cut. And hey, don't forget, if you like pruning fruit trees, if you like fruit trees, projects, homesteading, any of this type of stuff, guys, don't forget to hit the like button. It really helps the channel, and subscribe if you want to see more from me. Okay, next we want to go over what a heading cut is. And a heading cut is essentially like topping the plant. If you're familiar with that term, when you're growing tomatoes or other vegetable plants, you top the plant to produce more vigor at that terminal node, and it causes more branching, and ultimately it'll shorten it, but it'll also create more vigor at that terminal node that we pull off. So we're going to be doing a lot of those as well, because we want this fruit tree to ultimately grow outward with lateral branching outward and upward. So it's a wide footprint. It's a big developed structure. And to do that, we have to continue to branch off. Every year we have to make more branches outward. So that's where our heading cut comes in. And it's essentially identifying a branch that we want to keep, but we just want more at the end. And that's where you take your terminal bud off, which is the bud at the tip, and it's going to send the energy to the most local bud at the tip, and it'll cause more branching there. So if we want to take a look, and this is where we can go over the direction that the buds will grow. And when you're looking at that, we identify that this is a vegetative branch or a vegetative bud. If we cut right before this bud, the tree will put all of the energy going out this way. So you can determine which bud you want to cut up to determine which direction that new growth is going to grow. So you could think of the leaving these vegetative buds as your future direction. So in this case, we know we want to grow outward. We don't want to grow in toward the tree, and we want to make sure we're growing more lateral than vertical, so we can keep the height under control. We don't want it to grow too tall, so we can select which bud we're going to cut to. And in this case, I think I'm going to choose this bud here, because that'll grow out this way, and it's not going to grow directly up. So what I'm going to do is just simply cut the branch right there, leaving this bud, which is giving me a good selection. It's also important to note that you don't want to take more than 1/4 of the branch off when you're performing a heading cut. The reason for that is the more you take off, the more vigor that the tree is going to send to that area. It's essentially like the deeper you cut, the more branching and more leaves are going to come from that point. It's where we can choose that's what we want or what we don't want. So we're at the bottom of the tree here. I don't necessarily want a ton more branching and a ton more leaves. I want to create more fruit production. So I only take a couple inches off the top of this, so it thickens this branch, it changes the direction of where new growth will grow, but it's not going to create a massive eruption of growth and vigor at this point of the tree. So with that heading cut, I'm happy with this branch. I'm gonna leave that the way it is. So next I wanna go over the last cut that we're gonna be doing today, which is a bench cut. And these aren't typical, you're not gonna be doing a lot of this on more mature trees. This is mainly for building the structure of a younger tree. But it can be done on an older tree. Like this is a 3-year-old tree, and sometimes when you take a step back and you determine, look, I do need to remove some older growth, some 2 or 3-year-old wood, and I need to change the direction of where that tree, that branch is growing. And this is where a bench cut comes in. So what we're looking for is where the branch makes a Y, and you're cutting right at the tip of that Y, the beginning of that Y, to then change direction so that all the growth comes out toward where the branch that you're leaving on. So to put that into practice here, I determined that this branch right here has a lot going on, and it actually has grown in the wrong direction for me, but only some of it. So right here at this Y, I noticed that this is growing in toward the middle, and then it has another branch which is crossing other branches, and it's touching branches, and it's not something that I want to keep. So with a bench cut, I'm going to leave this growth because it is growing in the right direction. I'm going to shorten it, but it's growing in the right direction. I'm going to remove the larger wood here. So this is a bench cut, and it's essentially going to be changing the direction completely of this this wood. So let me get in here, and we're going to take this entire branch off, which is not necessarily a good thing, but it's necessary to the tree. So that there is a bench cut. And now what that's going to do is cause this, all the energy of this branch to now, instead of grow in toward the middle on the branch we just cut, but out toward the sun and open air. Here we have a great example of a bench cut that I did in previous years when the tree was much younger. If you look here, I had a branch that was growing directly up, and I had 2 branches that were coming out this way. So I performed a bench cut, and I took this branch off, and the tree redirected the energy. Instead of going up and more vigor growing from here, it redirected the energy both to these 2 branches, which gave me a great structure that most of the branching on the tree is growing from now. So this is a great example of a bench cut I did when the tree was probably 1 or 2 years old. So now that we've determined the 3 types of cuts, the 2 types of buds, and generally what we're trying to do with the tree, it's now time to start pruning it and really just kind of taking things off and stepping back and looking at what we took off and what more we could take, or what direction we want the tree to grow in. This is where your creativity really comes into play, and it is a work in progress. So don't feel like anything you take or cut is the end all be all. The tree will grow back even if you make a mistake, so don't be shy. Cut it back, cut it down, and it will grow back. But we do want to keep in mind of where our fruiting buds are, and we don't want to cut too many of those so we get fruit next year. That's the goal, is we want to try to get some fruit. So looking at the tree, I now see where I want to do some bench cuts. I want to do some thinning cuts, some heading cuts. I know branches I want to remove, and I'm just going to start going and taking cuts. And we'll generally shape and structure this tree. So let's start taking some cuttings here. All right, so we just ran around, we did some pruning, we did all 3 cuts. I identified where the fruiting branches were, I identified where the vegetative branches were, I did heading cuts where I want vigor, and I did thinning cuts where I had to remove a branch completely. Typically, or most of the time, it was the branches that were growing in and were going to cross and kind of crowd the center of the tree. If you look now, every branch is growing outward, or will continue to grow outward and upward. And I did some bench cuts where I wanted to create vertical branching for future fruit nodes and fruiting flowers. I left a lot of fruiting buds here. The long lateral branches that are coming off the main stalk have those round buds on the end. Those will open up into flowers for the spring, and I made sure to leave those on the 2 or 3 year old wood that can support a heavy fruit set, which is important. If we allowed to keep flowering buds on thin wispy branches, and then it develops a nice big hardy pear, the branch will bend over and it will just become limber, and it won't look good, and potentially the fruit can either fall, be damaged when wind blows, or anything could happen. So this is pretty much where I'll leave it. All right, guys, that's pruning in a nutshell. And when you're all done and everything's said and done, and you've done all 3 of your cuts, you have identified all of your buds, you have completed your pruning job, you'll end up with trees that look like this. They still have plenty of that first year growth, lots of buds. I took off a lot of that older growth that's growing toward the middle on all the trees in the little orchard here, and everything's relative to my height and where I want them to be. That's about 6 foot. I'm about 6 foot. This one's a little taller. The peach trees grow a little bit more vigorous, but that's generally it, guys. So get out there, have fun, prune some fruit trees. It's cold out, I know, but you know, once you're out, you have a good time, and that's what it's all about. So hit the like button if you like this video, and subscribe if you want to see more from me. And don't forget, guys, we're on Instagram now, so follow us on Instagram. We're making reels, we're making posts, we're doing stories. We're just getting creative with that, and we're having fun with it. So follow us along there. That's at Twigs_homestead on Instagram, and I'll see you guys on the next one. So have a nice day.